and happy podcasting day to the world out there. Gentlemen, happy podcasting day. We're back again.
Good evening.
Good evening, good afternoon for Ross. Good morning for other people. Good late night. Good Taco Bell run to those others. But yeah, it's
some fourth meal.
Fourth meal time for some people.
11sies.
Yeah, afternoon tea.
Second breakfast.
Supper. Can't forget that one.
Supper.
Exactly.
Gentlemen,
we're in rare territory for this year in our Lord of 2021. We get to have a podcast after a win. So
wow.
Kind of unusual territory. I feel like Jets fans maybe.
Was that not one of the funnest games though that you've seen in a long time?
I have to be honest with you. That was a game that I was just not into.
What?
Yeah,
that's bizarre, dude. Like, there was so much interesting content in the game. There was so much interesting, rare stuff going on, man. What?
There was definitely stuff that happened in the game, and I have rewatched it, so it's not like I don't know what happened to the game. So I've rewatched the whole game, and I have a good idea of how it went, knowing the end result. But I left, and the reason why I left was because I left after the missed field goal, and I just didn't believe the offense had anything to give that day. Like, Adrian Peterson didn't look good in his few touches. They had the non-peep-ball fourth down special teams, direct snap to Travis Homer, and they just like blazed down the field. The defense came out on that first series. They got a 3-and-out. I was really hopeful, but just the offense looked bad. And then they missed that field goal, and that was, I don't know, I just didn't feel it. So I ended up getting a Christmas tree, set up the Christmas tree, got some lights on it, plugged it in, put some water in the thing so it doesn't die even faster than it already is. And then I got to catch Gerald Everett fumbling the ball at the 1-yard line and watching in a panic as they had a 30-23 lead, and how the defense basically the march all the way down the field until they got to the 4-yard line, and then they shut him down. So that's what I saw live.
We don't get, at least under Pete Carroll, we haven't had very many of these games where you're trading turnovers and stuff like that, right? It's just not something that we see very often. And I mean, obviously, you hate our own turnovers and you love the ones that we get, but there was just something fun about the back and forth of it. I really just enjoyed watching that game.
It was a bit of a throwback. There used to be a lot of games like that in the 80s and 90s before super hyper efficiency took over, where it was back-to-back picks and then a fumble and then another pick, then 2 fumbles. And there used to be a lot more of that back in the day.
Yeah.
These days it's pretty rare.
Yeah, I mean, to have the bookend of Gerald Everett fumbling the ball twice, one, in our red zone and one as we were about to score in their red zone, it was that was a very tough thing to watch, especially since those were the only things that I saw live. That was rough. And then luckily I didn't see live the touchdown that they would have scored, but Gerald Everett, for whatever reason, just bobbled the ball and then kicked it up in the air in the red zone where there's not space, just defenders, and then the Niners got an easy interception. So
yeah,
I mean, if I had watched that, I don't know if I would have come back to the game, but yeah. So I was glad to have the pressure kind of taken off of my viewing experience and not have my heart racing the whole time, because that was a very good game. Rewatching the game, you really didn't have a great idea of who was going to win that game until it was over. Seattle had a chance, they had multiple chances to kind of shut the door and just kind of blow it out. But then they couldn't close it out on, especially on 2 different goal line stances. So
we left a lot of points on the field for sure.
I mean, I wrote this on the forum. I wrote this on Hawkscast.net that Gerald Everett was directly responsible for a 21-point swing.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to say that he's the worst player in the world, but he definitely had the worst day by far of any Seahawk that we've seen in recent history.
He did have a rough day. I just want to say that on the fake punt, the homer touchdown, it was awesome, exciting. There's something super likable about that guy to me. Without knowing much about his personality, he just kind of seems like, he's just does his job, and he's been in made some pretty fantastic plays for us this year. But I remember right after he scored that touchdown, the first thing I thought was, thank God that a blocked extra point in a loss isn't the season's highlight anymore.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny. So that's one of the plays that I saw live, so I was able to see it happen in real time, which was great. But as soon as they snapped the ball, I was like, wow, they're going to score a touchdown on this play. Because you looked at the lineup that the Seahawks had and how many people they had pulling left or moving their linemen to the left side, creating blocks for Travis Homer, and then Nick Bellore blocking downfield. Like, they had really no shot. So it reminds me of Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee, former punter for the Indianapolis Colts. He has a podcast now. One of the things I heard was his interpretation of what happened when he and the Colts had a 100% trick play to score a touchdown. So he was the snapper, and he was going to basically walk in from a touchdown. So they had a specific hash, they had a specific down that they had to be, a specific distance, and if a certain player was not in a specific area, they were going to run this trick play, and he said it was 100%er. What so happened is they were playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is his hometown team, and Troy Polamalu in his heyday had never lined up in the area, but for whatever reason on that play he lined up there, and Pat McAfee just killed the play. It's like, we're kicking it, we're going for the PAT, we're going for the field goal, whatever, we're not running the play that we had originally. They kicked the field goal, and the coach asked him, hey, what'd you see? It's like, I saw Polamalu standing right where I was going to run, and I didn't want any of that. And that play reminded me of what we saw with what the Seahawks saw. They must have had film after film after film saying, if the Niners do this, we are going to run this play and we're going to get yards. And in this particular one, they just caught him totally off guard and ran it for a huge touchdown, which I think is obviously our longest rushing touchdown of the year. But I was really impressed. The first thing I thought of was that is not a Pete Ball call, but they must have seen something they liked.
Well, yeah, and then you saw after that, every time we punted, there was a guy right there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But you guys watched the game live. You saw the back and forth. What are some of your takeaways after that game? Everyone was involved. DK got some big plays. Tyler got a huge go-ahead touchdown. We don't want to talk about Gerald Everett. Freddie Swain looked good. D. Eskridge, he got his first touchdown. Adrian Peterson did not look great, but he scored a touchdown.
I mean, going back to Gerald Everett real quick, was that the worst game of Seahawks played since Curse in the NFC Championship game against the Packers? I mean, he ended up with redemption, and obviously Everett never did. But in regular time, they got targeted 4 times, 2 interceptions. It's still
I would say no.
It just felt bad.
I would say no, because the only reason why I say that Curse's game, while bad, those interceptions weren't necessarily his fault. 2 of them were off his hands, dude. Off his hand. Maybe I need to go back because I remember the play, and I feel they were just contested throws. They weren't tip ups or fumbles.
No, it's every time you're targeted, it's an interception.
No, and I think it's a good comparison. I think that Gerald Everett, because each time, every turnover resulted in the ball touching or leaving his hand. I think that is by far the worst.
It's worse. There's no redemption. It just sort of reminded me of that. And it's the thing is, what makes it slightly more balanced though is that Everett on one of the fumbles wasn't actually, he didn't have a bad grip on the ball. He wasn't doing anything wrong. People are getting, have developed new techniques for punching the ball out, and there was just really not much you could do.
The second fumble, it was the helmet. The helmet punched the ball out, and that's hard.
There's nothing you could do.
That's a
And
hard
then
one to defend. The first one though,
Yeah.
that he just like held it high and loose
Yeah.
and like they punched it out.
Yeah. And then on the interception, I mean, okay, you're supposed to just catch it cleanly, but you don't. Things happen, but you're still sitting there just trying to make the catch. He's pretty focused, but he ended up just popping the ball up into the air for somebody else.
Is that kick at that last moment?
Yeah.
If he had just left it, it would have been an incomplete, game on. But the fact that he popped it up, and not even to himself because he was already falling to the ground. I get the moment, like it's hard to train yourself to not do that in that situation. But it was a rough day for Gerald Everett, and I'm sure that's not the type of game he wants to play. Like he's had, I would say, a pretty productive year for the time he does get targeted, but that's I don't know how you come back from that. Like if the Seahawks had lost that game, that's not a game that I think you could come back from and like try to build towards something new and better.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay. He's a better player than that. It's just 3 of his worst plays to happen in the same game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
it's rough.
Probability can be a bitch, right? I mean, if you end up with 2 fumbles over 3 years, that's not bad. But what if they all happen in the same game? What is it?
Exactly.
I mean, it's so bad, but just kind of a fluke thing. I mean, like you'd almost be in more trouble for having a single fumble. You have a single fumble, that means like you were bad that day. Like you screwed up. If it's 2 fumbles and you cause an interception, like, I'm sorry, you just offended the gods this week. There's not much we can say to you because that's never going to happen again.
Yeah. I mean, I look at going back and rewatching that game. I don't feel like the Niners did a whole lot to score. Like they had a few drives, but they didn't have anything that I felt was like super like basically what we saw when we saw them play Washington football team or against the Vikings or the Titans or any other teams that we had lost to early in the year, where they were just like putting drive after drive after drive. Even the first game of the year when they played the Niners, like their biggest touchdown was like, a bad coverage play, which, either Jamal Adams or Sidney Jones messed up, depending on who you particularly don't like, you'll probably blame them. But I don't feel like the Niners had like a great game when they put up their 23. Like their best drive resulted in a turnover on downs, I feel.
Yeah, I mean they didn't, they were missing Debo, which is a huge part of their offense. And the other main guy in their offense, Kittle had a monster game.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
he obviously did everything he could have done.
That 40-yard touchdown, I swear someone could have easily just like touched him as he was moving and he would have gone out of bounds, but no one could do it. So
no, couldn't get a hand on him.
Yeah.
I mean, Jimmy G is what Jimmy G is, and he's not the guy that's going to go out and win games for you. You know what I mean? And the Seahawks defense did a good job of taking advantage of his mistakes. And the 49ers, for whatever reason, decided to play single high safety most of the game, which it's almost like they haven't been watching film, because as soon as they went back to the 2 high safeties, all of a sudden we couldn't move the ball anymore. You know what I mean? There was that big chunk of the game where they were just playing with the 1, and that's easy for Russ to exploit.
Yeah, it's a weird game, but it's also very typical of a Seahawks Niners game. I feel like that, things just for whatever reason bounce more Seattle's way in these type of games than they have otherwise. I mean, this is Carlos Dunlap's first sack appearance of the whole year.
Right.
So Bobby Wagner gets his first interception of the year. So it was definitely odd. But yeah, it was definitely a fun game. Not being able to watch it and not be stressed out about the ending was a different experience. I haven't really had a lot of those in the past few years, so that was kind of nice too. But happy to have another win, even if 50% of all our wins come from one team. I'll take it.
Right.
So the Seahawks rebound. They secured a season sweep of the San Francisco 49ers. So the question is this the building block that will help the Seahawks return to form, or is this just a blip? The Seahawks are facing a team who's probably in worse turmoil in the Houston Texans, but instead of just injuries, their meddling management has sunk this team from much of doing anything this year. Can the Seahawks take advantage? This is the Hawkscast.net podcast. You can find us obviously at Hawkscast.net, on Twitter at Seahawks Forum or Seahawks Podcast. With me is Zeb and Ross. You can find them on the tweet machine. But gentlemen, we're going to jump into topic number one. And Zeb, I'm going to hit you up first. Are you ready to believe the Seahawks have turned the corner, vying for that 7th seed in the NFC playoffs?
No.
Oh, that was quick. All right, topic number 2. Let's go.
Like I said, I love the win. I loved the game. We did see some encouraging things. I think Russell, if that finger has been bothering him still, maybe this was him turning a corner a little bit health wise. He looked a little rough at first, throwing them low screens and being off the mark, and then he kind of seemed to pull it together and looked like Russ of old. So that's good news. Like I mentioned before, the 49ers definitely didn't do everything they could to stop us, which hasn't been a difficult thing to do this season. So I think a lot of that probably is because of that. Obviously remains to be seen what we look like against the defense next week or this coming weekend, which shouldn't be that difficult of a matchup, but things are the way they are, so it probably will be. I think there's something to be said for momentum, and we saw that this team and Coach Carroll have, they're still giving it their all. They still want to win these games very badly, and getting a win obviously could be that boost that they need to kind of pull it together. I still think there's a lot of issues, and we probably looked better this last weekend than we're going to most of the rest of the way, but I'll remain cautiously optimistic, and hopefully we can put a string of wins together.
Ross, what about you? You're always someone that I feel can see the big picture. Does the big picture involve going, I think they have to go 5-0 down the stretch. Only 2 of the teams that they have to face the rest of the year have a winning record, and that is the LA Rams and the Arizona Cardinals. And the Cardinals, that's week 17, 18. I can't remember which actual week it is. They might already have wrapped up the number 1 seed and have nothing to play for. We did lose to their backup already, but, do you believe the Seahawks have turned the corner, and are they fighting for that 7 seed?
Team of Destiny, woo! Objectively, there were some encouraging signs this last game. Of course, the 49ers maybe, they're missing a person here or there, but every team we're going to be playing from here on out is going to be missing people. It's late season. And they didn't maybe necessarily play their best game, but they came in hot. They were they had won 3 in a row. They want the wild card as well. They weren't like flopping. They weren't, they were doing their best. Maybe they didn't make always the best choices, but, we were shorthanded as well. We ended up playing 2 rookies on the line by the end of the game, and one of them did pretty well, Forsyth, and one of them, he finished the game. He was still alive. Calhoun, I don't know if I really want him out there again, but he undrafted dude just thrown in there. Cool. We played with that, and we still beat them. Eskridge actually ran routes that weren't just like, up to now, he didn't really run routes, right? He was like, it's a bubble screen. So you stand there, and we're going to throw you the ball. Or you run across the formation, and we're going to hand it to you on a jet sweep. He actually ran routes, ran them well, had a touchdown. There was a Dunlap sighting on defense. He had 2 really important plays, the safety and then the batting down of the ball. I hate to say this. Jamal Adams is out. So they're not going to be forced to figure out how to use him and sort of tie their hand behind their back by playing weird, unbalanced defenses. That's just going to be Ryan Neal and Blair out there, I think. Although Amadi has regressed this season. I don't know. There's Russ looked a little bit better after the first quarter. I think there's reason for optimism. 6-0, or sorry, 5-0, whatever we need to go. That's a tall order. But like you said, one of those games, maybe the Cards don't have much to play for. The Rams, I mean, it's a division game that's always going to be close. It's, all records are sort of off when you're playing inside your division. And we have a couple what should be fairly easy games if we are anything near what we were last week.
Right.
Like the Texans should be. If we struggle with the Texans, it means like last week was just like I said, it's like, hey, that's a division game. You play your division opponents tougher usually, and we just seem to have the 49ers number. So the Texans game actually is going to tell us a lot about, I think, more than maybe the 49ers game. About this. Like, did we come in and we were pretty strong and we kind of dominate them as we should? Because holy crap, what a mess we'll talk about later. Yeah, I think there's a chance, but I'm not booking tickets over there or anything like that. But
right.
there are, I've said it a long-winded way with Zev said. There's reason for optimism. Another wide receiver weapon goes immense. Some depth on the line, or finding ways to cope with the weakness in the line. The defensive line playing better. The safety that's not a safety, that making things awkward because we have to play him because we gave away our franchise future for him. He's now out, and to be honest, I really do think that's going to be addition by subtraction. I hate to say that, but I really do.
Interesting.
We'll see.
Interesting. Yeah, their chance to secure and strongly compete for a 7th seed, it kind of got ruined when they went on 2-3 game losing streaks. They obviously have a chance. It's very small. They need so many things to work their way, because the best they can finish is obviously 9-8. But if they end up tied and they're vying for one spot, and it's against New Orleans or it's against Washington or it's against any of these teams that they have lost to already, then it shoots their entire opportunity. So they could have a 9-8 season, but still getting that 7th seed is going to be tough. So the one thing that I think you can look at is you have the fan perspective and you have Pete Carroll's perspective. During the entire losing streak, those multiple 3-game losing streaks, Pete Carroll has never wavered. He's always said, we're competing to win. We're not going to tank. We're not going to do any of these things. That's loser talk. # read my book, win forever. That's what Pete has instilled with this team. And last week, I know I was very down and sour on the team, and, how Pete and Russ and John can work together as the core of the Seahawks, as, the upper levels of, controlling all the strings. But they came out and they fought and they fought and they fought, and that's what Pete Carroll teams do. So, you don't like how he plays his game, you don't like his play calls, you don't like his challenges, you don't like how he uses his timeouts. His teams, honestly, though, are super competitive. I remember watching, Jim Mora's last year and Mike Holmgren's last year, and I thought Mike Holmgren was the consummate professional, and he would never let his team, quit on him. And I felt halfway through that year, Holmgren's team kind of quit on him. They were like, yeah, I'm kind of done with Holmgren. I'm kind of done with this West Coast offense. We already know the next coach is just sitting to your right, so why we listen to you when Jim Mora is going to be the one calling the shots next year? Similar thing happened. That's not happening with this 2021 4-8 team. People are still playing really hard for Pete Carroll, and that's a testament to him and this team and what they could do. I don't think it's realistic that they're going to get that 7th seed, because they need too many things to bounce their way, and this doesn't seem to be the year that things are going to help them out. We'll see, but it's a very tight rope to thread. But if they finish the year with 6 games in a row, it will be quite a feat. And while that won't put them in, strong playoff positioning, I think that would potentially, depending on how they win, maybe make something that they can build off of next year. But we'll see.
And it would sure be a lot of fun, wouldn't it?
I mean, the most fun I think would be is just the fact that we would beat the Rams and we would beat the Cardinals, which is, again, going 4-2 in the NFC. That's always a good thing. So
playing with nothing to lose is fun. Playing spoiler is fun too. So even if the playoffs are off the table, which they're not mathematically, but most likely, going on a nice run here would be a lot of fun for me.
I agree. I would love to be a part of it. Final thoughts on the 7th seed in the playoffs?
I think we're all on about the same page.
Like I said last week, it just so much feels like the 80s or the 90s, man. Like, they're just checking every week. Like, oh, we still have a chance. We still have a chance.
We need these 7 things to happen, and if these 7 things happen, then we can wait for the next week's 8 things to happen, and then we've got a chance.
Yep.
We need this team to win, but not this team. But next week, we need that team to lose and this team to win.
We need this team to win, but not more than 14 points.
Right. You're calculating like point differentials at that point. It's like, you know what? It's an NFC team, so they're they're playing an AFC team, so it doesn't matter if they win because we don't have a common opponent. But they have to definitely beat this AFC team because we have played them. So it's all kind of the weird tie-breaking situations that definitely come up, but we'll see. Moving on, let's talk about topic number 2. So Ross, Jody wants to make changes. Russ is entertaining trades. Pete thinks about retiring. What madness is going on? If you had gone to Twitter, if you'd gone to social media, if you'd gone to dedicated Seahawk websites, even Hawkscast.net, every place has been inundated with rumors and speculation, and the fact that even in the midst of the season still not being done, there's a lot of talk about change that is on the brink of happening. Why do you think we're seeing that in the middle of, a pretty poor 4-8 year? Is that what we're seeing? Is that the cause?
That's the reason, isn't it? I mean, it's a 4-8 season, and it's not just that; it's cumulative. There's been, it's always the thing. Like, are patterns actually patterns, or is that random? But if you want to see it as a pattern, I mean, going back to last year, Russ has been average for us as far as the eye test, not for numbers. Like we said, ironically, during maybe his worst year ever this year earlier, he had a better than his career best passer rating. It's weird. But yeah, I mean, losing especially with a team that's not used to losing anymore, people are going to be impatient, if you want to call it that, or people are going to want change, or people are going to think that, some people will say somebody's being impatient. Some people will say, well, that's because the other side's gotten complacent. I mean, it's all a battle of perceptions, but at the end of the day, losing breeds discontent. And I think I'm a little bit, again, like, it's funny to me that Russ is, if we believe the reports that he maybe wants to go to the Giants, Saints, or Broncos. If you believe that, I'm a little bit disappointed, because I think that once upon a time, Russ was the type that would have said, wow, we had a losing record this year. I want to be part of the process that fixes it. I don't want to go out like that. I don't want to go out with the last thing I did in Seattle was I led him to a losing record. I would think he once upon a time was the person that said, no, I don't. I want to prove that I can, deal with adversity and fix that. That's who I am. Now, modern Russ is all about, well, if this team's a losing team, then I want out, which is what they're saying. Or I don't want to deal with Pete Carroll anymore. And again, that just shows me, like, massive lack of self-awareness. Like, or flat out potentially veering into selfishness. Like, I want to win, but I want to win the way I want to win. And I think that's the best way to win. But why? When has Russell's best season been when he had to throw the most? It hasn't been. Most quarterbacks, that's not true of. Peyton Manning won his first Super Bowl when he didn't have to be the man. John Elway started being good in the playoffs when he wasn't the man. Hell, the Patriots just won a game against Buffalo Bills throwing 3 passes. It doesn't have to be that way. So, yeah, if Russ wants out because we're losing, and if Pete Carroll's thinking of retiring because I think this year has been particularly hard on him because he finally gave into some pressure, did some things that he doesn't think was the right way to go, and didn't work out, but he doesn't think he's going to win that argument, doesn't think he's going to win that debate, doesn't really want to start over again at 70 or 71. I don't know, but I mean, a lot of these rumors also started when we were in the downward spiral. I'm interested to see what the rest of the season does towards people's feelings. Nothing's said, and I don't think Jody's the type of person to do things mid-season, whatever. But what I really, really do respect is that she has been quiet about stuff like this. Unlike some people's camps who constantly play the media. You can't have it both ways. You want to have that super awesome, cool rep, then be that super awesome, cool person. Don't try to be that cool person, but then transparently have your camp and your friends and your agent and your wife and your wife's camp constantly leaking stuff. We're not dumb. Anyway. Yeah, again, at the end, the short answer is when you lose, people want to change because nobody wants to keep losing. The thing is, some people want change internally, some people want to bail, and I think this says a lot about people.
Do you feel that any of them have merit? Maybe that's another question that we could ask.
The Russell Wilson report, I don't want to believe, but the fact that it's specific lends some credence to that, right? Like, and it makes sense. He would welcome a trade to the Broncos. Broncos are unsettled their quarterback. The Saints unsettled their quarterback. Giants, Jones isn't getting it done. Makes sense there. But on the other hand, maybe, that's all so difficult. I wish I knew more about the rumor. I had to track it down, actually, when you said the show sheet. I hadn't read it. I haven't been reading much lately about this kind of stuff. It does also, at the same time, make it like it may be an easy rumor to make up. Because if you were going to make up teams, I suppose that's the teams some of the teams you would say, right? Because that's kind of obvious. Low-hanging fruit. Gee, what teams would want it? The Broncos obviously were trying to get Aaron Rodgers, so of course they'd want Russ. Saints, Jameis Winston was 5-2, but he didn't look particularly awesome doing it. And he's just tore his ACL, so who knows? Yeah, and then Daniel Jones with the Giants, and again the rumors that Russ wants to be in a big city, and that's kind of weird to me too, though. I mean, Seattle's not a huge city, but Seattle's pretty goddamn high visibility in the modern world, in the modern, everywhere I travel, people know a lot about Seattle. Everybody knows it's not. This isn't 1987 where people like Seattle and they're like, crabs, salmon, what, something, fish, apples, what? I mean, Seattle's big time now. It doesn't have to be the biggest. I mean, it's got almost as many people as San Francisco. San Francisco is not a huge city either, but it's a happening place. It's where the future's being made. So I don't think necessarily there's a lot of merit to that. But I don't know. It's hard, man. It's hard. But like I said, it's odd that that's very, very, very specific with the rumors. So I kind of believe it.
Interesting. Zeb, what about you?
For me, it fits with what Russ has been like the last couple of years, to be honest.
I think that's totally fair. I think that's a fair assessment to make based upon reports that have come out directly from Russ's own agent. So, Zeb, what about you? We're hearing basically the rumors. The next thing we're going to hear is that Portland and Seattle are both on fire. We've heard about that. But what is really going on with all of this turmoil that we're happening still in the middle of a season that Pete's trying to say, we can still win it, that Russ is saying we're still in it, that Bobby's saying we're still in it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like even if most or all of the rumors aren't true, this stuff is just false information being leaked, I can't help but feel like we're on the verge of some pretty major change one way or another. It just feels like that's coming. And it's interesting because, you look at a team like the Steelers, for example, who are, over the last decade or so have been relatively successful. One of the more successful teams in the league. And they've had some down seasons. Nothing terrible, but they've had some losing streaks and seasons where they just didn't look good. But they always stuck with their guys, right? Tomlin and Roethlisberger. I don't even ever remember there being times when it felt like there was the possibility that those guys were going to be moved or fired or traded. It was just we'll try it again next year. So it just doesn't feel that way to me here in Seattle. I think big changes are coming. I don't know if it's going to be at the coach level or if it's going to be at the player level or if it's going to be at both. But I'm not expecting to come into next season with Pete Carroll as head coach and Russell Wilson as the starting quarterback. I just don't see it happening.
Can I add just real quick to what Zeb just said? Because I think that's really, really interesting. And I hate to be like some sort of anti-Russ mood because I'm not. But it really, like you said, like some coaches and quarterbacks just go together as a set, and if it doesn't work out this year, okay, we'll just try next year. And literally, I 100% agree. It doesn't feel like that with Russ and Pete, but that makes me think, and I hate to say this, that as some people have always suspected, that there's a lot of Russ that was up front. Because I used to argue that it wasn't, that he was just that way. Because here's the thing, Russ and Pete publicly espouse almost exactly the same philosophy. This very, very positive, this very visualization, this almost new age, believe in yourself and it's going to happen kind of thing.
It's not even the glass is half full, the glass is overflowing. Yeah,
and those personalities generally attract each other and stay together. It's incredible. Like as I've espoused, for example, Pete Carroll's philosophy more and more as far as business world, I've ended up with more and more people like that as I seek them out in interviews, as I seek them out on resumes, and I end up with and those people tend to form work groups together. Those people tend to work best together, and you see that everywhere. That's a natural, supernatural fit. They should be in a room together again and agreeing that, hey, yeah, and here, like, as long as we get the win, doesn't matter what my numbers are, doesn't matter how we get there, and I believe we can still do that because I've worked before, but, can we do this, that, the other thing? There's still room to talk, of course. It's not delusional positivity, but it shouldn't be to the point where, like, I want out because I'm not the man. That's hard to square. That's hard to square with the espoused philosophy and the espoused positivity. You're saying that you really don't believe in this coach that actually did bring you to 2 Super Bowls, that it's never going to work again, and that somehow football has so fundamentally changed that his philosophy doesn't work when it clearly does. Sorry to all those other people, those fake pseudo analytics people, because again, that's not works. What matters is time of possession. What matters is turnovers. None of that. Oh, passing is more efficient. Well, yeah, but no, it's not because it's all connected.
Which is funny because I use the hashtag Peteball as kind of a joke, but that's really what Pete Carroll has always been about. Control the ball, and it's basically it's espoused in a different way, but it's protect the ball. It's don't turn the ball over. Control the clock, whether that's running the ball or completing passes. And, keep it close. Like, that's, like, the core fundamental of what Seahawks football is. It's why people are always upset that we never, like, dominate teams. Like, we never roll up 45 on someone and give up only 15. It's always like, well, we're going to score 30 and we're going to let you score 21. We're going to score 20 and you might score 17. That happens so many times that I think people are kind of like, look, can we just, like, be a dominant team and just, like, win and just steamroll everyone? Which, I don't think that's what this team is close to being at any point. All of these questions, all of these, like, madness that I feel that's going on, yeah, it's definitely driven by the 4-8 record. I think a lot of it is that, there are people that have basically been talking about the Seahawks' death for years. When they didn't make the playoffs 3 years ago, oh, this is the end of Pete Carroll. The game has finally caught up to him. He needs to go. They need to trust Russ and give him the full reins and just let him throw. I feel like these are just people who have been predicting the Seahawks to fall and crash and burn. This is them, like, cashing in those priors. There's definitely a sense that people want Seattle to fail, not because they're bad, but they just don't believe that Seattle could sustain this. On Twitter, some random person said that, Seahawks have the only reason why they've been successful is because of Russ and luck. And luck eventually ran out. And it's like, Well, Russ has been pretty consistent, excluding this year, but their luck has also been consistent for the past 4 years. So is it really luck that's why Seattle has been so good? If it's over 4+ years of games and records and performance, isn't that like Pete and his philosophy and the way that he coaches his players and the responsibility that he gives to his coaches? That doesn't really sound like luck. But it's
the problem with defending Pete is so much of what he does is sort of intangible or non-statistical, non-apparent. So people easily attribute it to it's all just Russ, or it's all luck.
Right,
because
it's easier to focus on failed fourth down calls, like when he doesn't go for it or when he does go for it. Like, no one out there, when they scored that touchdown on going for it on fourth down, is saying, you know what, I got that wrong. Pete made the right call that time. I'm going to give him credit. They'll be like, no, I've been telling Pete to do that all year long. So it's easy to nitpick on those things that are like on the surface, but like you said, Ross, there's so much to what Pete Carroll does that is not just the regular football coach. It's about the fact that, his players still believe in him. His players are still fighting hard. These are guys that, people say like, oh, they're playing for next year because if it's not for the Seahawks, it's for another team. But if you're playing on a team that can't even win like 5 games, how many people are really going to look at you unless they're really desperate? So I think a lot of this, what this madness is, even amongst this 4-8 season, is that people are just trying to cash in their priors and trying to show that they knew that Pete Carroll was going to fail. They've just been wrong about it, and they're still potentially wrong about it now, but they're just trying to cash in on that as quick as they can because it generates clicks, it generates controversy, and, there are a lot of people out there that want to go and protect Pete, People go to hawkscast.net, do the same thing. So that's my take on it, at least.
That's a fair take.
Fair and balanced. That's what I strive. But let's move on. We got to go to topic number 3, and Zeb, I'm gonna hit you up with this one first. So controversial, but with Jamal Adams' injury, is it time to admit this trade was the worst the front office has made?
I mean, it's I still feel like it's redeemable, but if you look at what we've gotten versus what we've given up, it's got to be up there, right? Like, I believe Jamal's played his heart out, and he's had actually some, he's played very well sometimes, but you don't feel like you're getting what you wanted out of him. And now that he's going to be spending the rest of the season out with injuries, and he spent a significant time last season out with injuries, it's just not looking real well in our favor. Not that we haven't had bad deals before. This particular regime has had their fair share of giving up too much for things that just didn't work out. And it sucks, but we've always been able to stay afloat. So I think this is probably, when it's all said and done, the cost to gain ratio is probably going to be not looking very well in our favor.
What did we give up to get Harvin?
Percy Harvin was the first. Let me see if I can find out. I was actually just looking for that.
Yeah, I'm thinking Harvin. I'm thinking
Percy Harvin. I know people didn't like the Jimmy Graham thing, but he wasn't awful.
Right.
It wasn't a great fit.
And then there was Sheldon Richardson was another.
So that was really bad too, because that just smacked of desperation as well. You never make a move because you're desperate,
right?
But going into the season, suddenly we needed a defensive tackle. Okay, cool, I get how you thought process, but you're still dealing as if you're desperate. Even though it was only half the cost, I still think I kind of rate the Percy Harvin worse.
Really?
it was horrible. Like the long term effects on team chemistry,
Yeah.
and the absolute lack of any return. At least like Jamal Adams, he was hurt last year. 9.5 sacks though. Like if I say you can have him for like 1 first round pick, and you get like a season of 9.5 picks, 9.5 sacks rather, and a record there, and you're like, oh, that kind of sucks, but I get it. Percy Harvin's best play was in a Super Bowl that was essentially already over.
Yeah. So here's what they gave up for Percy Harvin. They gave up a first pick in 2013, a third pick in 2014, and a 7th pick in 2013.
I think that's worse to me, given the overall. And it was also because we took in him, we let
Golden Tate go the next year.
Golden Tate go. Yeah, I think Percy Harvin's worse, but it's close. That's just my opinion. Because of, like I said, the long-term effects on chemistry. It almost, I mean, like that's the year we did go to the Super Bowl, but it does, and we won, but it does feel so like the beginning of the end of the locker room unity. Yeah. It's hard, but it's tough. Because the other thing is, like, we got rid of Bradley McDougall, and I don't know if we upgraded. Like Jamal Adams is more athletic and is a better football player, but he's not a better strong safety. And we did need a more like dynamic person in that position. But I'm still going to say Percy Harvin was the worst, and I'm going to say Sheldon Richardson might even actually be worse just because of the desperation.
It's interesting. So I looked at Sheldon Richardson because that's what my initial thought was. Like, oh, Sheldon Richardson, he didn't really do anything. So I went to Pro Football Stats, and they actually had Sheldon Richardson year kind of like on his average performance. So you can find like their kind of year average, like their value, and they number it 1 to whatever. And he got an 8, and that's kind of like his, like, it's not the bottom of his performance, but it's kind of like his average. So the Sheldon Richardson they got, it was a 2nd round pick. It definitely wasn't great. They didn't get a lot out of him, but I feel like I'm a little bit more with you, Ross, that it's really that Percy Harvin trade that really made things worse, because it was a redundant position. They already had wide receivers. They had Sidney Rice, they had Golden Tate, they had Doug Baldwin, 3 guys that are not all-stars by any stretch in the sense of like the NFL as a grand scheme, but perfect for what the Seahawks needed and how to operate. And you gave up a player that didn't help you be 13-3 that year or 14-2 that year. Just like Jamal Adams is not the reason why the Seahawks are 4-8 this year. The reason why the Seahawks are 4-8 is beyond Jamal Adams. Same reason as Percy Harvin wasn't the reason that we won a Super Bowl. It wasn't the reason why they went 14-2. But what you have to look at is, because of this acquisition, what did you lose? You lost Golden Tate the following year when you probably could have signed him for a much better deal than you extended Percy Harvin for. Percy Harvin, and less than a year and a half later, he got traded to the Jets for a 6th round pick in 2015, which Seattle then traded away, so we didn't even acquire anyone with that pick. I don't think Jamal Adams is the worst trade in franchise history, because Jamal Adams, when he has been on the field, he's played, I feel, above average, better than what you would expect. Now the question is a strong safety whose best asset is blitzing and sacking the quarterback, did you acquire a player and did you use them appropriately? People talked about this on the website at Hawkscast, and a few people have said that they're looking at the cost to acquire and using that to evaluate, and we're talking about valuable first-round picks. Is there anything that is more valuable than that? And I think for some people there's not, because, even in this conversation we talked about it. You're mortgaging your future, your cheap asset for an expensive known commodity, and because of that injury, it makes it look worse. I don't think that makes it a bad trade. I think it makes it unfortunate because you can't control that. But if Jamal Adams ends up being a player that can't play that style anymore, that can't play in the box, that can't blitz anymore, is more injury prone because of this shoulder surgery, then I think maybe in a couple of years you can say, yeah, it was a bad trade because he got injured and he wasn't able to play to that standard. I still don't think it's the worst trade, just because for all the things that you said, Ross. I mean, Percy Harvin punched out 2 people on the Seahawks team. He definitely punched out Tate. Is there anyone else that he got in a fight with?
I think it was just Tate, wasn't it?
It was just Tate? Okay, I mean...
I think I might be misremembering.
It's funny because if you talk about that, there are people in social media, like beat reporters for the Seahawks, that are like, yeah, I can't believe we'd never noticed that, Golden Tate had a shiner in the Super Bowl, and it's because Percy Harvin punched him, in practice that week. It's kind of crazy to think about. So it's unfortunate, but I think, like, to your point, Ross, this is going to be an interesting thing where we're going to see a lot more Ryan Neal. He's actually my favorite person to replace Jamal Adams. I'm not the biggest Amadi fan. I'm not the biggest Blair fan. I don't think they are anything more than a guy. Ryan Neal, he's made definitely a lot more splash plays than Amadi or Blair has. So I'm looking forward to see what Ryan Neal can do in Jamal's absence over these next few games.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's do it. Let's make this a good thing.
Yeah. We'll have to
trade him a 7th rounder.
Yeah, I mean we'll have to save it for later, for what is the best trade of all time. So we'll have to look at that in maybe in the off season. But let's move along, and we'll move on to the last topic of the night. That is the Houston Texans. And Ross, did the last few years show how poorly the Texans were really run? I mean, Bill O'Brien, whatever his name is. Bill O'Brien, the old coach, and their crazy owner who used the wrong phrasing when it comes to letting the inmates run the asylum during the whole turmoil of standing during the anthem or not. People might assume that the Seahawks are on that same trajectory, but is this Texans team like a worst case scenario of how not to run your NFL franchise? Like, think about all the star players that they've traded off and let go over these last few years alone. 2 of them to Seattle. Seattle's not close to that, are they?
I don't think you can be close to that because Seattle's ownership, at the very least, understands that they're not football people, and they always hire, like Paul Allen put in sort of devil advocate offices and people in place. Like, he has people, since he's not a football person, he actually apparently had hired people like to question, like their sole job was to question like what Pete Carroll does or what John Schneider does, so he could go to them and say, why did you do that? Not to attack them, but to make sure that they were held accountable, to make sure that they could give reasonable reasons of why they did things, explain their procedures, things like that. And when Jody took over the team, from what I've read in the past 2 weeks especially, she kept all that stuff in place. And that's why, for example, our last topic, she's now saying, hey, is this what we should be doing? Because probably the people around her saying, there's just too many questionable decisions that are adding up, piling up, and now we're stuck like this. So we won't be like that because the Seahawks are owned by intelligent people who are truly intelligent. I suspect, obviously, he's successful. If you own the Houston Texans, you are a successful something or other. That doesn't mean you're a successful football owner, because that's not how he made his money. You make your money, then you become a football owner. And that intelligence doesn't transfer across. Like, there's different kinds of businesses. The owner of the Browns, I don't think, is particularly intelligent. He just stumbled into a couple of good decisions, and now they're doing things sort of the right way. But the owner of the Texans has no idea that he doesn't know what he's doing. He's got no self-awareness. Which shows up all over the place. It's hurt his teams. Yeah, he's got a star quarterback who's got some legal issues, but also just doesn't want to play because he has no self-awareness. You've got bad business decisions that you're talking yourself into because you think it's okay because you don't know anything about football.
Yeah. So real quick,
Yeah.
I want to add, because I wasn't aware of this. So Bob McNair, he was the one that made the asylum comment about the football players. He passed
Yes.
away in 2018, 2018, and his wife now runs the team,
Yes.
and his son is the CEO. So his son is 60. I don't see a lot of like high like business building. Like he obviously has run some businesses.
Yeah, I mean
but
he's I mean that means he was also raised rich. He was raised how to be a business mind, but for all sports are unique types of businesses, right? Because it's essentially a game that's been turned into a business, and so it's got unique aspects. And just because I forget where the McNairs made their money originally, but it wasn't football. And just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at another. Even if you're good at football, it doesn't mean you're good at teaching football, coaching football, right? So
yeah, so he looks
they
like
really don't. Yeah, they're the last people in the world who should be hands-on owners, like like the Snyders of the world, and like you really don't have any idea what you're doing. Like, so what are you doing? Instead, like if they were really smart, they would hire football people to inform them and put like I said, put processes in place that are sort of safeguards, so you can still make your decisions, but you've got the right people helping you make those decisions, giving you the right information, giving the right devil's advocate processes. Really, trying to be innovative instead of just going, well, I'm a genius because look, I'm rich, so I must be a genius. That's how you trade like Hopkins, and you get back David Johnson, like a running back who sucks and is way past his prime, and was already past his prime when he traded away a top 5 wide receiver for him. Just bad football decisions all over the place.
Yeah. Zeb, what about you? You look at the Seahawks and what their unknown future looks like, and you look at the Houston Texans and what they've done. And to add to that, they are ranked 32nd in passing yards, 32nd in offensive yards, and 32nd in defensive yards. So they're very much fighting for the bottom of the NFL barrel, even with their 2 wins.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. Well, I'll admit to not knowing a whole lot about the Texans organization and not paying super close attention to the team over the years.
So let me give you kind of this added question. Is that because they have given you no reason to pay attention to them, or is it just because you're not interested in an AFC South team?
Yeah, no, it's definitely because they have been pretty mediocre. They're rarely the worst team in the league, but they've never been the best team in the league. With Bill O'Brien and Deshaun Watson, they had something pretty good going for a little while at least. And then they just kind of seemed to start making weird decisions. And I don't know if McNair's passing had something to do with that in recent years, letting, like we mentioned, some of the best players in the league at their positions go or sit on the bench all season. But it's definitely felt like a poorly run team for a while now, despite their fairly recent success. So I think that the Seahawks will thankfully be better off than that, and we're not looking at a long-term downward spiral because of all the reasons Ross mentioned, having people in charge who care and are smart and will make good decisions. Hopefully, like I said, we don't know much about Jody, but until she does something to say otherwise, I believe she wants this team to be successful, and I think she'll do the right things to get us there.
I look at the Houston Texans, and Ross alluded to this a little bit earlier, is when you have non-football people making football decisions, no matter how long you may have been a vice president or executive for a football team, doesn't mean that you know how to run a football team. And that's maybe what the Texans are running into. I'm looking at a lot of their trades. They've made some really bad trades, like, you know, Jadeveon Clowney for a third-round pick and half of his contract already paid by the Texans. That was a great deal for Seattle. You look at the fact that we gave up a second and third-round pick for Dwayne Brown, and we got a fifth back as well. That seems like a pretty easy trade, where Seattle wins. 2 years ago, the Houston's traded for Larry Tunsil and Kenny Stills, and they gave away their own left tackle, a corner, and 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick.
Jesus.
That just seems like a lot. I mean, you know, I know why Dwayne Brown left the Houston Texans is because he didn't get along with the owner, especially during all the things that were going on at the time in the world, especially in the U.S. But I don't know how the Texans are going to rebound. You know, they have this generational talent in Deshaun Watson, who is in a lot of trouble. I don't know how they're going to get out of it, because I don't feel like they're going to get out of it with him, because they are totally fine with him being in this like weird legal nebulous where he's being investigated, but they won't let him play, but he's not exempt. So it's like he's just inactive every single game. Is that what they're doing with Deshaun Watson?
It's weird.
Like
if Deshaun Watson wanted to, he could force the issue because of Terrell Owens, because of the Terrell Owens situation, the rule changed. But Watson is, because of his own legal situation, is not going to force the situation. So they're just sitting there. He's getting paid to just sit there.
Yeah, because he's basically just being consistently ruled inactive. Correct?
Yeah. And it's funny, too, because they refused to trade him because they couldn't get 3 number ones. They could get 2 number ones, apparently, this year. But the thing is, again, it's just bad decision-making. Like, yeah, maybe you can get more later, potentially, possibly, maybe. But if you get less now, you actually have more time with it. You get it to use it now, and you get to develop it now. That matters, right? You know, they draft picks put off a year, usually you discounted basically a whole round, right? So, I mean, oh god, it's just so bad decision making over there, over and over and over and over again.
Like, could you imagine having to rule Deshaun Watson inactive for like 14 weeks already through this year? I just looked it up. Yeah, every week they're just ruling Deshaun Watson as inactive. Like, he's not practicing, obviously. He's just inactive, taking up a roster spot, which is very valuable, and he's still getting paid, which is equally very valuable. The NFL is obviously trying to like keep this at arm's distance, but they're not going to rule until actual charges come through. And the Texans, I feel, leaked this to punish him. Obviously, Deshaun Watson does not sound like a great dude with all of these allegations, you know, piling up on him. But I also feel like this is kind of something that the Texans knew about for a long time and were waiting to use this against him. So it sounds like an awful place to be at any point in anyone's career. So sorry to any Texan fans or Texan players out there that have to deal with this, because it is beyond crazy.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it.
And I don't know how it ends. Like, I don't know if they like kiss and make up, like Deshaun Watson and the Texans.
That's not going to happen. It's going to be basically at some point they're going to get a trade offer to a team that Deshaun Watson actually wants to go to, and to get it done, he's going to settle with the 22 accusers I think that are left, because it'll make it worth for him, make it worth it, and then he'll go do his trade, and the other team's going to give a discounted offer, because when he actually plays again, he'll be probably suspended for 6 weeks. Yeah. But they have to get a trade offer that they'll accept to a team that he wants to go to. Because if it's a team, he doesn't have a no trade clause, I don't think, but he has one in effect, because no team is going to be able to do the trade unless he settles, right? You're not going to get it if you think he's going to go to jail for 10 years.
Right.
So you can only do the trade if he's willing to settle with those women.
And that's
And you
assuming
have
that
to
he
look-
can even do that, right? Because there is no proof that any of the women that he has these allegations that they're going to settle. Like this might not be something that they're willing
I
on
think
principle.
they will, because it's. I mean, he's not being accused of like sort of like forceful, harmful rape. It's mostly, not to discount it, but it's mostly sort of the pressuring or the inappropriate kind of stuff, right? It's
Coercion.
not good.
Right.
But I don't think it's anybody who said. I mean, a lot of them even said, a lot of them who say this happened, even at the time, still wanted the money because they met him for multiple appointments, right?
Right.
So I think I'm not saying like it's not true. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of those people saying, oh, they're just doing it for the money, because the dude, if you go through 60 masseuses in a year, yeah, you're not doing something right, because generally when you find the person who gets you stick with your one massage person, right?
Right.
So you're obviously
like
not
with
going-
any
you're not-
person
yeah,
that can help you in the long term, you will see the same person again and again.
right. Like you don't go to do a different dentist every time. You don't go to a different eye doctor every time, because then you have to have the same conversation, right? So there's all sorts of he's definitely guilty of stuff, but I do think that a monetary punishment is probably going to be sufficient in most of the people's, if not all of the people's minds. The NFL will still probably feel pressure to do something. Like I said, so I figure like a 6-game suspension, and after that it goes on. But again, he's not going to settle until it's a situation he wants to be in.
Beyond crazy. All right. Final thoughts on the Texans and how we want to avoid that shit show.
Yeah, let's not be them.
All right. Sounds unanimous.
Life goals.
All right. Let's go to our predictions. So we have some predictions, and predictions from last week were not super positive. I think I'm pulling them up right now, so I don't have them.
Dude, I pretty much nailed it. Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
you're the only one that actually had them scoring like actual points in the game. So credit to Zeb. Here's the final scores. Ross predicted a 49er 24-21 win. I predicted a 17-14 49er win. So Ross was close in the Niner points, but Zeb knocked it out of the park. He predicted a 31-24, which is essentially just 2 points off. One for the Seahawks and one for the Niners. So, Zeb, congratulations.
Hey, thanks, man. I don't do it very often, so I appreciate the flowers.
You did it enough. So, with that honor in mind, we're going to let you pick the first score. Seahawks at Texans. They are a 7.5 point favorite as a road visiting team.
Well, gamblers, be ready, because it's going to be Seahawks 27, Texans 19.
Ooh, covering. Nice. Ross, what do you have for the final score?
24-10 Seattle.
24-10 Seattle. Yeah, we're facing David Mills. All I know about David Mills, because I have no interest in the Texans, is that he's got a really long neck. He's not that good. I think he's had one okay game. I don't know if I trust the Seahawks to score a lot of points, so we're going to go 17-10 Seahawks win.
Nice.
17.
So we're all picking the Seahawks win. Hopefully that's not the jinx, because
Why is his neck so long?
I don't know, man. Maybe
It's adapted for eating off of the tops of tall trees.
That'll do it.
Mike Glennon also had a really long neck. That was
Mike Glennon's that's just supernaturally long. There's something wrong there.
But you know who I'm talking about. You know how long that dude's neck is. All right, Zeb,
Yep.
who's gonna
That's
have?
the first thing I noticed when he was a rookie. We played against him when he was brand new. I think he may have knocked the Seahawks out of the playoffs, actually.
No, because he was the quarterback that took over for Russell Wilson at NC State, and then he played for the Bucks, I believe.
Yes.
Right, and I believe he played against us. Am I remembering it wrong?
Well,
He beat us in the game where he had no reason beating us, and I believe.
I don't. It wasn't because we played the Bucks in year 2 of Russ and Bobby Wagner, and we won that game. But it took a lot to win that game, I believe.
Okay,
It was ugly, yeah.
So, Zeb, who's gonna have more touches? Alex Collins, Rashad Penny, DJ Dallas, Travis Homer, or Mr. One, Adrian Peterson?
I'm going to say Alex Collins, and we're talking single digits here.
Okay, fair enough. Ross?
Adrian Peterson.
Adrian Peterson going to get the most touches. All right. I really don't want anyone to touch the ball. I mean, I harp about running the ball all the time, but everyone kind of looks terrible at it. So I'm going to say that Travis Homer gets more touches. Maybe not in the conventional running sense, but more in the, like, we're going to pass you the ball on some screen plays. You're going to get the ball in the flats. We're going to see what you can do. Now, the question is, Zeb, who is going to be the best runner of those same 5 running backs?
I'm going to be stupidly optimistic and say Penny.
Okay.
I agree.
Penny, man. I don't know. That guy's going to, like, have one run and then, like, get gassed and be done until the fourth quarter, I feel. I want to put best in quotation marks when I give this answer. I'm going to go with Homer again. I feel like the Seahawks want to maybe give him a little bit more opportunity because he has been such a good soldier in the football sense that they might give him a little bit more touches, and maybe this is a game where he does a little bit more with them. Again, I don't think it's going to be just as running plays. I think he'll get a chance in a little bit more in the passing game.
I'm a Homer fan, man. I like that. I'm with you.
All right, and the final prediction for the evening, over under 3.5 failed screenplays. Zeb, are the Seahawks going to run more or less than 3.5 failed screenplays this game?
I'm going to say under because I might burst a blood vessel if it's more.
Ross, what about you?
I'm going to go more. Over.
Oh, my God.
You hate me.
I feel like this is kind of like that head versus the heart. What I think will happen versus what I want to happen. I want them not to run screenplays because they suck at them, but I think it's going to be over because they're going to try and use screenplays as a replacement for running. So I'm going to say they're going to have more than that. And if they run more than 4 failed screenplays, I might go buy a second Christmas tree. I don't know.
Here's my question. If a failed screenplay leads to the defense over pursuing, which in turn leads to a positive Seahawks play later, is it really a failed screenplay?
Yeah, it's still a failed screenplay because that's not the play you want to suck people in on.
I mean, it kind of is.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen that happen where we like run a fake screenplay second time and they bite on it again.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's always a first, right?
Right.
But gentlemen, that is our show for this evening.
That was a fun one.
Yeah, because we actually had like positive things to talk about. We haven't had a lot of that, so
let's keep the fun going this weekend. Huh?
No, that's on the Seahawks. You know, we need them to do what they do. We do what we do.
Well, we're the 12s, so we're responsible too.
It is a 10 a.m. Game, and again,
we're
like
10 a.m. So guaranteed win. 10 a.m. We're in.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm hoping the offense has found itself. I'm really hoping that Russ's finger is better. He did a really good job. He went 30 for 37. So his that was a season high in completion percentage, and he threw the ball across the middle. So credit to Russ for that. So good job, Russ. Keep it up. Gentlemen, time for some shout-outs?
Shout out to you guys, and shout out to Birdfinger, and shout out to Travis Homer.
Nice. Ross, shout
out to Amazon and Google and all those delivery workers working hard.
Yeah, they sure are.
Nice. Shout out to the gentleman sitting across from me over the microphone. This is the Hawkscast.net podcast. I am Sam. With me as always is Zeb and Ross. Check us out at the website. Go to the forum. Lots of fun conversation. Check us out at Twitter at Seahawks Podcast, Seahawks Forum. You can like us on Twitch, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud. We're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, and we all wish you a very good Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.